Welcome to Subscription Prescription, the podcast where you get the information you need to scale your subscription program. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another dose of Subscription Prescription. I'm your host, Matthew Holman, and this is the podcast where we try to help you figure out everything related to D2C subscriptions. I'm really excited. Today, we're going to be talking with a really compelling, amazing subscription brand. So I'd like to introduce Stephen Racano, the head of growth from Geologie. Stephen, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be there.
Absolutely, man. So I'd love to hear more about you, your background. How'd you get into this position, some of what you've done before, but also what you're now doing currently for Geologie. And then, of course, we can talk more about Geologie itself as well.
Sure. So I'm Stephen Racano. I head growth at Geologie. That's basically everything from acquisition to retention all the way through the life cycle funnel, ensuring that we're bringing on quality customers that are leading towards the long-term growth of our brand. It also does include looking at the growth of our marketplaces and retail, as that does relate to the business, but the core growth of Geologie has certainly been within the D2C subscription side of things.
Cool. And have you always been like a kind of subscription e-com guy, or what's a little bit more about your background before you got into Geologie?
Sure. So I've been in the space for about just over 20 years. I started actually doing SEO and web development back in the early 2000s, like most people who got into the space. That took me into the agency world where I started an analytics and measurement team for a company called Morpheus Media and Create the Group, which ran a whole bunch of luxury e-commerce websites and brands. So then I got to run on some pretty large brands across the tech space, retail, a lot of luxury apparel. From there, I went to Group M, and I ran a search and social analytics team for Group M for a couple of years. And then my wife's job actually took us over to Italy, so I had to quit my job and take on freelance. I did pick up some really cool Italian clients, but while I was there early on, I got introduced to the founders of Geologie, and well, here we are 6 years later.
That's fantastic. So yeah, tell everybody about Geologie. I mean, I know it's a skincare brand. It's one of the, I think, iconic ones in the space from where I'm sitting, but I'd love to hear from you more about the brand's background.
Yeah, Geologie was launched in 2019, and we're primarily focused on personalized skincare routines. Our core demographic is the male skincare space, but we do offer unisex solutions. It's really derm grade skincare that is simple, effective, and just easy to stick to. Our core business at Geologie is definitely skincare, but we do have body care and hair care as well, and our retail and marketplace presence, certainly heavier on some of those other product lines. But our D2C core subscription business is all about getting guys like you into a personalized skincare routine that you'll actually use, but more importantly, one that's just quality and high result, and will give you the results that you want. So the formulas just use a handful of simple ingredients. Hyaluronic acid, retinol, niacinamide. They're just really clean and simple to use, and that's why guys love us.
It's so interesting. You just named 3 ingredients that I know of separate brands that have just a core focus on one of them, niacinamide or hyaluronic acid. So it's interesting that you mentioned all 3 of those at once. And of course, as any podcast host, I'm trying to balance between asking questions that my audience is really going to enjoy or appreciate, but ones that I want to know more about, because I would say for me personally, the last few years, I've become much, much more interested in skincare as I've gotten more red spots. My wife's worried about, cancer or pre-cancer stuff. So it's really, really interesting and great that you're helping people with that space. I'm curious, like the first real question that came to mind though, is talk about the difference between selling a standard single product. Well, even if it's multiple SKUs, but like, hey, here's our skin cream. It's designed for everybody versus something that's a little bit more personalized, something that's directly for like what somebody needs. What is that like because I know there's a lot of complexity on the logistics side, but also, so let's start with there, because I'm going to ask you about how that's like on the retention side. But what is that like from like an operational website standpoint, all the flows, all the different things you could be doing with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and hopefully out of this podcast today, your audience will not only gather some insights into, some best practices on what we do from a subscription side, but maybe they can learn a little bit about what will work for them from a skincare routine while I go
Awesome.
through that.
Definitely.
Um,
I love it.
skincare routines or our personalized set really is our hero product, which is a main, differentiator. That causes a variety of opportunities and also barriers, right, in terms of complications. So I would say that some of the main opportunities that definitely brings out to us is our diagnostic quiz that we have on our website, which is actually the fundamentals for creating those routines for guys. So
Right.
you would come into the website, you would take that quiz. It's anywhere between 10 and 12 questions, depending on the concerns you have. So, say you came in and anti aging was a concern, and sun protection, and dark under eyes, or, I'm not calling you out specifically, maybe myself. A lot of guys come to us for acne concerns, right?
Okay.
And that's how we build those routines is we take those answers and we've done about a million plus, probably closer to 1.5 million diagnostics over the
Wow.
last 6 years.
Wow.
We make decisions based off of that to get guys aligned with the right formulas. I think we want to keep things simple for guys. We don't want to have too many formulas, but also we want to make sure that those formulas are a good fit for them. And they can come in terms of the total number of pieces within the set, but also in terms of the actual formulation of ingredients of those products. Um, some of the benefits of having that is you're naturally set up from a product standpoint to build a healthy habit for your consumer, right? And one thing about subscription business is the more habit forming it is,
Right.
the easier and better it's going to be for you as a brand, but also for the consumer, right? Because you're building a habit that you use every day. It's very predictable, and the longer you use that product, the more results you're going to see. So, that's definitely one benefit of having a routine as your hero product. The
Do you
other
find,
thing, having
oh, sorry, I was
that
just say, do you find like it's easier to communicate that creating that habit because it's a personalized formulation? Like, because I know that's like the goal of everybody, like whether it's unique or not, but is it a little bit easier to market them saying this is specifically for you, like so start using it?
I would love to say that my job is easy. Working
Easier, I guess. Yeah.
skincare as a routine, I would say it certainly creates a differentiation within a space that's very complicated, right?
Okay. Okay.
The space is extremely saturated with a variety of products, and it's very complicated, particularly for guys that are brand new to skincare, right? To
Mhm.
understand what they need, right? So I mentioned three ingredients at the beginning of this, but like what we're not talking about is like what products are needed, what do they do, right? It's not
Right.
just about the ingredients.
Right.
And I think that the quiz and the personalization certainly offers us the opportunity to, explain why and what a morning routine should have and what a night routine should have for guys and the effects, that they're going to get out of each of those things for sure. Yes.
Do you do that as part of the acquisition process, or is that more of like an onboarding sequence once somebody's purchased from you?
It's really a combination of both. I think, another benefit of having a subscription service is you don't have to rely on just one touch point to tell your entire
Right.
story, right? So, a lot of times when we're thinking about the UX, we need to think about it not only from the acquisition standpoint, the landing page, the diagnostic, what we call our diagnostic results page, but all of the post-purchase or abandonment communications that follow that, right? Because acquiring a customer is great, but one thing you'll learn if you get into the subscription business is that not all customers are built the same. um,
Right.
and like the more I think you could educate along the upper parts of the funnel, and as you get started with the process, the more benefits you're going to see in terms of the life cycle of that customer, or just really understanding what they need.
No, I mean, you're pulling the words right out of my mouth. It's like you start setting somebody up front. It's a double effect. One, if there's a friction point down the road if somebody isn't educated or somebody doesn't know how to use the product. You can get ahead of that, but also you're setting somebody up for why they should be using it, benefits, things like that. That makes a lot of sense. Do you
Mhm.
guys, how much, I'm curious what, from a communication standpoint, how much is that happening after the fact? Like onboarding flows. I mean, I'm sure a brand of your size is sending upcoming order notifications and stuff, but I'd be curious to hear your perspective on how much you're emailing subscribers or not, because there's a lot of variety in the space from brands that do very little to do tons.
Yeah. We try to let our consumer tell us how much they want to be communicated with. A lot of guys want just set it and forget it. They're
Right.
coming to us because we're simple, and they honestly they're not going to go follow us on social. They're not looking for tips and education along the way. We certainly provide a really thorough, here's how to get started, as part of the product experience, which a lot of guys really appreciate. And I think that that allows the guys who want to be on their own to be able to do so. At the same time, we do have a really beautiful welcome onboarding flow that introduces you to, the importance of a routine, what to do, day and night, how to make it simple and effective for, the concerns that you have. Um, and then, after that, we like to try to educate consumers on, potentially additional products that, they would be interested in within, our product collections. Because a lot of our customers do start with add-ons, and we'll certainly jump into that because I know you want to talk about AOV, and it's a really great conversation for people driving subscription to have. But if you do start on a more basic or essential type of set, then how do we educate you on that we have the best natural deodorant in the space, or hey, did you hear about our GQ award-winning, body wash? Because those are definitely things we want to bring attention to in our post-purchase flow.
Again, you're talking my language. I mean, I use Dollar Shave Club as an example on the podcast a lot about how, I've been a customer for 7, 8 years now. I've never bought an upsell. I never open an email. Like I just want to get it on the schedule and that's it. And so I'm assuming I'm still a pretty good customer from an LTV standpoint, but yeah, that's me. I'm not following them on social. I don't care about anything. Like they migrated subscription platforms. I don't care. Like I just want my order to come. But and I'm gonna have to check out your deodorant a little bit later too, because my wife's been saying I should try something a little bit more natural or healthy there. But I digress. I'm curious around that. How do you view that? So I'd love to hear from you your strategy related to. I think you've kind of started to unpack that a little bit of like, you have a hero product, you have that hero SKU, and you have upsells, and there's people that come in different ways. Like, is part of that purchase experience like you want to try to win somebody initially with that hero product, or are those upsells actually like surfaced fairly early on to see? Because obviously driving a higher AOV is great for the business, but also if somebody wants to buy like 6, 7, 8 things initially, then they're often like much more serious of a customer anyway, and they're going to be better for you in the long term.
Yes. I mean, the routine in itself, because it is 4 or 5 products, I think, definitely gives a great experience to any consumer coming into our brand in terms of being able to experience what we're all about, right?
Mhm.
Across, separately, we do a lot with Sub and Save on Amazon and our D2C, one-time technically one-time purchase PDP side of the business, but we offer,
Right.
Save and Save there as well. But it's a very different experience when you're dealing with the routine. When you consider add-ons, right? So if you want to add a deodorant or a co-wash or body wash or maybe a higher SPF to your routine, we certainly see that people do oftentimes like to do that on the first purchase, particularly because we incentivize first purchase discounts to new customers coming onto subscription. Uh, the more products that you take, yes, the more you're going to love us. But I have our co-founder Dave to thank for that and developing great product. In fact, I woke up with a huge pimple this morning, Matt, and I was really nervous that it was not going to go away by this time. And we have this blemish buster spot treatment, and I
Oh
used
wow.
it in the morning, and I mean, feel like I
You
look
look
pretty good now.
fantastic.
And
Yeah,
that's
yeah, no,
only
you
six
look great.
hours. So, the more products you use from us, I think the more you see results and in different ways. And, like our body wash and deodorant provide a different sensorial experience than our skincare does, potentially in terms of, the types of results that the skincare gets. So,
Well,
yes, we love to get people on as many products as possible early on in the process. And it definitely is something that causes a layer of kind of like pricing elasticity that needs to be measured and understood.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I want to come back to that statement in just a second. But I mean, it makes sense too if you just think about like if somebody's buying the message, they're buying the value prop, they're buying the product. If you have other products that align with that value proposition, like it makes sense that they would want to potentially try them and replace them and improve their life across the spectrum.
Mhm.
So that makes a lot of sense. Now you mentioned price elasticity. You also talked a lot when you were talking about your different backgrounds about like analytics. You know, I've talked to a lot of heads of growth, and everybody's trying to be data focused, but it's actually somewhat rare to hear somebody who's have such a strong analytics background. So I'd love to hear more about your perspective on that, how you approach data, how you use data in your business, because as we both know, being in this space, like everybody says that they track data and that they make decisions based on data, but the data would say that is not actually the case.
Yeah.
Forgive my pun.
As
Go ahead.
somebody who does quite a lot of consulting for companies, I certainly understand people love to talk that they do this,
Yeah.
but I help a lot of people set their analytics up. So I certainly understand where most companies are in this regard. And I would say like start simple, in this regard, like understand who your customer is coming in, right? What cohorts those are, where they're coming from, and understand more. The most important thing to any subscription business is the contribution margin, lifetime value to CAC ratio, and that cash
Right.
flow over time, right? Like, and at a very simple level, this can be done in a way that like you understand who's coming in, how long they're likely to stay on, and over time, how much are they returning, to the business. And then from there, you could start getting into testing around pricing elasticity, discounts, right? What's the total number of products or quantity per order that, is right for each of those consumers? Because I can tell you, we bring in guys as young as I see some guys as young as like 12, 13, maybe even younger,
Oh, wow.
taking our diagnostic, right? And they're going to have a very different lifetime value than a guy
Right.
who is in his mid 40s, right?
Right.
And we need to be able to understand that at a more complex level. But at the end of the day, the measurement across that funnel is the same. How much were we able to acquire that customer for, and what is their best experience to maximize their lifetime value over time, right?
I'm glad you point that out. I mean, that like I think a lot of brands miss that out as an opportunity, like that segmentation and understanding who's an actual profitable, like because it's just kind of one of those funny things. Once you do it a few times, you realize that hey, we've uncovered a segment here that we should be leaning more heavily into. Like they're
Mhm.
spending more, they have a higher AOV, their their return rate, right? Their retention stronger. We can afford to give a better offer to this segment, or we can afford to do a different type of bundle or something else like to incentivize this segment because they're going to be more profitable. I'm curious, like on the retention side, like, or what would I shouldn't put any words in your mouth, but what would be your next tip about looking at analytics and making better decisions from an analytics standpoint for a
So, I
subscription
mean,
brand?
just to stay on the topic of subscription, churn rate and charge success, and there's a lot that happens behind the scenes from an operational standpoint that
Right.
goes beyond the customer experience, right? And it's unbelievable how much those levers can move the needle uh, in one way or another. I mean,
Right.
and a lot of that feeds into the pricing elasticity. Let's just like look at the past few years, for instance, right? Like COVID hit, and everybody was looking for skincare. Everybody, right? Everybody was at home. They were, working from home on their computers, and D2C businesses were doing really well. I'm sure Dollar Shave Club, did really well during that period. I know a variety of different skincare brands that really grew, 2020, 2021. And there things have changed a lot, from an economy standpoint in terms of demand, since then. And that is going to change kind of not only the acquisition funnel and some of those LTV to CAC metrics, but it also changes things in terms of charge success and dunning and
Right.
churn, right? You now have customers that maybe would have stayed on at X price point that want to be at a lower price point because they don't value, potentially skincare as much as they did back in 2020 or 2021 when, conditions were very different. So I think it's definitely about understanding the life cycle metrics, but it's also making sure that you have the right metrics in place from an operational standpoint to understand how your subscription is actually working. Are you recovering people from, a dunning standpoint? Are you getting really good charge success on first order? How does the audience come in, and affect those metrics as well? Because obviously a 14 or 15-year-old on a prepaid debit card is not going to have the same charge success rate as a 45-year-old, with a platinum,
Right.
Amex.
And that might be the most unique statement I've heard about Dunning ever. When a 14-year-old a prepaid debit card, but it's true. And like again, a lot of the brands I've talked to, like they aren't necessarily even looking at, like, maybe they're looking at dunning, they're looking at chargebacks, but they're not necessarily really paying attention to like initial charge success. So that's a great thing to call. And I did want to say for anybody listening too, just to explain, Stephen explained what price elasticity is, basically whether how resistant people are to different price points. So something's fairly inelastic, meaning they're not going to change. If something's elastic, they're going to bounce and go somewhere else if the price isn't right for them. I
Mhm.
always forget that I need to try to define stuff for people listening at home. But okay, so and I feel like you have another point you want to say, like looking at, or should I jump into another
I mean,
question?
I could talk about this,
Yeah,
all day.
I,
It's a very the operational side of it is very complicated, and it
right,
changes, quite a lot. It's very difficult to understand why banks, sometimes will approve charges and sometimes won't. And I think like having a core understanding at least of which way your metrics, are going, and the way your audience maybe influences those metrics, as the example, I gave you, is just like an important part of making sure that you're getting them into the right product fit at the right price, because there are those kind of secondary factors, right, that kind of fall outside of the general life cycle. If you could love our product, but if it's too expensive for you, then subscription's not going to be good, right,
right.
for you.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And if we weren't recording, I'd have more questions about some of your strategy on how you're segmenting on the back end for that, but I don't want to necessarily get too deep into the secret sauce. But I'm curious from an analytics standpoint, any tools you're using that you guys like inside your business?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of homemade reporting, because we have an amazing e-commerce manager, which that's also his background. I obviously come from an analytics background. We love Looker Studio, and
Yeah.
we use, Google BigQuery, and basically put all of our data in there. That's really the getting the data in and making sure it's available to us to make decisions. The other part of it is really things like little data, who I think is how we got our introduction. But you will see, and I'll mention it, like understanding a lot of these metrics and feeding them back into Meta, into Google, into Klaviyo, into all of the different tools that we have from a marketing standpoint are also extremely valuable, right? And I think we're obviously moving away from a cookie world, and
Right.
audience identification is already complicated, let alone now I need to layer in predicted LTV, you know, actual LTV, and really understand some of the things that are driving those metrics back into these platforms to be able to optimize the audiences, that I want coming in. And I think tools like little data and audience identification tools that allow you to pass that level of robust data and not just normal meta pixel data back into those platforms is really an important component to our business.
So and so for me, like the little datas and north beams and triple whales and all these different things of the world often feel like they get kind of jumbled together, and it's not my particular area of expertise, but I'm curious with what you just said. So I'd love either a correction or to elaborate. Does that mean you could take like a cohort inside your subscription platform that you've identified as having strong LTV, and you can pass that through little data into your ad platform to try to acquire more customers like that? Am I oversimplifying? I mean, obviously I'm oversimplifying it, but what is a use case of how you're using little data to like do better at audience identification?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is taking, metrics that don't typically pass right through to a Google Ads or a Meta type of pixel, like lifetime value, and building, lookalikes and optimizing to those metrics,
Okay.
right? That's definitely, part of it. And in some cases it's optimizing to that, right? Like, think of it from, you come in on a subscription. Right now we have a variety of ways you could come on, but a lot of our customers start with a trial skincare set, and that trial skincare set can be priced at a variety of different things depending on where you're coming from and the discount that you're getting. But overall, it's fairly low value. It's an amazing offer, and there's a reason it's amazing, because we want customers who are new to skincare to try our brands because they're going to fall in love with us. But if you take that and compare that to our one-time purchase side of the business, right, and you actually buy those same products individually, it's actually a much higher amount of sales revenue, right? So
That's true.
now, think of how that passes back to a Meta or Google. Google is going to optimize towards a target ROAS, a target CPA, right? And if Google thinks that the one-time purchase is much more valuable to our business than the subscription, which has a much longer lifetime value and benefits, then they're not able to optimize properly. They're going to send us users that want one-time purchase. So using something like a little data allows us to put those more complicated metrics, predicted LTV, not only to build audiences, but to optimize, potentially to the LTV itself.
No, okay, that makes so much sense. Okay, yeah, that's a great example of that. Okay, so Stephen, as we kind of like wrap up, I just a thought, or I like to ask guests, especially people as experienced and smart as you about it, like any ideas, tips, tricks. Past guests sometimes talk about fundamentals or something interesting you've tried 2 years ago on a BFCM, or anything that comes to mind that you think anybody listening at home, ecom managers, owners, that they should maybe think about or try implementing in to help their subscription brand on either acquisition or growth or both side to work better for
Yeah.
them.
I mean, I think, like, one, having a product that is the right fit that builds, healthy habits and routines is a big part of it. But the other part of it is really the benefits and the perks, right? People are naturally subscription adverse. It's
Right.
something that you have a New York Times, you have Netflix, you have YouTube TV. I mean, like, how many subscriptions does the average person have, right, at this stage? It's a lot,
Right.
right? And like, I think people are naturally adverse to adding on another subscription. So, the biggest, advice is, like, make sure that your subscription or your membership is truly rewarding the consumer, right? And there's ways to do that, I think, without also just like going deep into the pockets on discounts, right?
Right.
And there's ways to do that that also help you introduce
Novel
products
products.
that maybe customers will love that they wouldn't have tried. So, like, everybody loves free stuff, whether that's free shipping or free gifts. Like, these are great perks. On making sure that your membership subscription pricing, is always better for the consumer, right? That you're rewarding the loyalty over time. If you stay, active, you're getting more and more benefits with the brand, right? Benefits are the main thing that's going to drive that overall retention, right? You need to love the product. It needs to be habit forming, yes, but, like, you want to solve price elasticity. Surprise your consumer with, hey, there's a reason that we're treating you so well for being on subscription, right? And that's going to
Yeah.
really help you win them over time.
Oh, I really like that. And I believe, if I'm thinking of my schedule correctly, this episode is coming out around Black Friday BFCM stuff. So Are there any
Hmm.
like geology specials that you can tease or let people aware of to go check out, or should we just be saying make sure you go check out geology, see what they're offering?
I'll tell you this, and I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. We have the biggest, best value we've ever released coming out for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and we are in the process of releasing that a little bit early to some of our existing audience and customer base. And I think that we're going to see over the next, as you grow as a company, you open these doors to actually do more of this over time, right? And provide more value, to your customers. And we've been really listening to what our customers want in terms of price and value, and what else is also on the market, right? Because there's a lot of cheaper, not as quality
Right,
stuff on the market
right,
that, and we need to compete with that. And I will tell you, um, we're putting the best the best offer I think we've ever put on the table, and we're going to continue it beyond Black Friday, Cyber Monday, because we can and we want to be. I think to take the next stage of growth in the company, we need to be just the absolute best value and not just the absolute best product.
right. I love that. I love that. And yeah, and I mean, your advice is, I think, you start with that quality of product, then you look at the experience, and then yeah, definitely getting more creative than just thinking about discounts or discounts or discounts, because people want different things, and you can drive a lot of value without just cutting into margins every time. So that was
Mhm.
awesome. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on the show. For everybody listening, we'll have a link to Stephen's LinkedIn profile in the show notes so you can connect with him. Also, give Geologie a look. I know I really am shopping for new deodorant. So I'll be looking at that. And then I think I will be waiting to see that BFCM special before trying the skincare quiz. So I'm a little bit there. But
You don't need to wait too long. Get in
yeah,
on
well,
it
it'll be
now.
later. It'll be later.
You can get that deal later.
Okay. All right. No, that sounds great. Cool. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. I really appreciate that. And for everybody listening at home, stay tuned till next week for another dose of subscription prescription.
Thank you so much.
That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe so that you can get notified when new episodes come out each week on Tuesdays.